Welcome to the series finale of my top Android app series. So in case you missed the announcement, at the start of last month, I posted what is, at least for the foreseeable future, my last monthly regular top Android apps video. And for a bit of context, I've been making monthly top Android apps videos for over 8 years now, can you believe? And so I felt the time was right to take a break from that series in the hopes that I can create even better content that is fresher and that hopefully allows the channel to grow to new heights. That's the plan anyway. Now don't stress, I am planning to still create some app-related videos. It's just that they'll probably look a little different and they definitely won't be monthly. But with that being said, it's a sort of series finale to commemorate what has been an amazing series on my channel for so long. I thought that I would create one final video showcasing my absolute 20 favorite apps of all time. And these aren't going to be a standard run-of-the-mill style apps either, like YouTube or Google Chrome or Gmail, for example. These are all slightly more unique than that. They've all also been featured on the channel at one point in the past, which I'll chat about throughout the video. But more than all of that, every single one of these apps is one that I'm still actively using to this day in one capacity or another. So without further ado, here are my 20 favorite apps of all time. And for a bit of fun, I'm going to feature each app in order of when I originally featured them on my channel. And we're starting with one of the all-time classic applications, Nova Launcher, which was actually featured in a top Android apps video that I made in September of 2015, a year before I started doing the monthly episodes, can you believe? But yeah, Nova Launcher is seriously one of the staples that I always have installed on my phone. Now, I don't actually use it as my full-time home screen launcher, but I do use it all the time to create setups for my app palette. I use it to recreate setups for any best Android setups videos that I make. And beyond all that, it's just a freaking awesome launcher that I am still a huge fan of. Another absolute classic of an app that I featured all the way back in December of 2016, so right in the early days, is this incredible shopping list app called Bring. And the fact that this app looks very similar now compared to when I first featured it on the channel 8 years ago is testament to how ahead of its time it was back then. But in case you haven't heard of it, as mentioned, it is a shopping list application with an amazing design that lets you quickly add or remove items in this tile-based interface. But then it also allows for real-time sharing of these lists, which means my wife has the same shopping list on her phone as I do. And if she adds or removes an item, then my list gets updated in real time and vice versa. We absolutely rely on this app. And then back to customization related apps, KWGT is another OG app that I've been using for close to 10 years now. And crazily enough, I never actually featured the app itself in a top Android apps video, but I have talked about it possibly more than any other app that I've ever featured. And I've also featured countless KWGT packs as well, including the first time that I ever featured one back in April of 2018. But yeah, to this day, I still use KWGT all the time, including for this widget on my home screen that I have set up on literally every phone that I use, which, by the way, is widget 3 from the Waffle for KWGT pack. Then we've got a File Explorer app that I also featured in April of 2018 and that I've used on every single phone since, called Solid Explorer. And yes, I am aware that pretty much every phone has their own built-in File Explorer these days, but they're all different. Most of them offer pretty limited functionality too, and so I've just found it much easier and better to just use Solid Explorer instead. Oh, and just back to this weather widget on my home screen for a minute, because I've actually got that set up to launch the next app on this list, and no, it's not the Google Weather app. It's actually an app called Frog Weather Shortcut, which, as the name implies, simply acts as a shortcut to open this version of the Google Weather app. And you might be like, well, why don't you just download the Google Weather app and use that instead? And well, this version of Google Weather, the one with the little frog at the top, it's not actually an app that you can download. It can only be found as a part of the Google app itself by tapping on this weather icon here, then by scrolling down and tapping this button here. And so for as long as I can remember, I've actually used the Frog Weather Shortcut app to act as a direct shortcut to this weather interface, both for any widgets that I'm using, but also just so that there's something in my app drawer too. And by the way, I still prefer its design over Google's new weather app. Then about a year later, in July of 2019, I featured another app that I still use quite regularly called Screen Dimmer. The app basically lets you lower your phone's brightness even further than what it natively allows for, and I actually stopped using this for a few years thanks to that extra dim feature that was introduced with Android 12, but with the Android 15 update, it actually stopped working as effectively as it once did, so I started using Screen Dimmer again. Even on my S25 Ultra, screen dimmer goes much darker than the extra dim setting. And the best part about this app in particular, in comparison to other similar apps on the Play Store, is that it also dims the status and navigation bars. Then we come to what I think is the holy grail of reminder apps, at least on Android, Memoreji. And trust me, I've looked for and tried to find a replacement to this app for years, but none have as clean an interface as Memoreji, and even more baffling, none allow you to customize snooze durations via the notification itself. Honestly, this app is an absolute must-have install on any and every Android phone that I own. The only issue is that it doesn't have an iOS version, and so just quietly, I'm actually looking to develop my own reminder app sometime later this year with support for both Android and iOS, so keep an eye out. Now, an app that already supports Android and iOS, as well as Windows and Mac, is today's video sponsor, CyberGhost VPN. Now, if you ever connect to public Wi-Fi, like at a cafe or hotel, your data is basically up for grabs. Hackers, ISPs, even the websites that you visit, they can all track what you're doing. But with CyberGhost, you just turn it on and boom, your internet traffic is encrypted, your IP is hidden, and you can browse privately without anyone snooping. And beyond privacy, CyberGhost also unlocks geo-blocked content on streaming services. Take Inception, one of my all-time favorite movies. It's not on Netflix Australia, but it is on the US version. With CyberGhost, I can switch my location and watch it instantly. And this works for pretty much all streaming services too, by the way. They've got servers in over 100 countries. They have over 38 million users worldwide with an excellent Trustpilot rating from 20,000 plus reviews. It also works on smart TVs and consoles. Plus, you can protect up to 7 devices using the one account. And then on top of all of that, right now you can get 84% off plus 4 extra months free using my link below. And they also have a 45-day money back guarantee. So there's almost no reason not to give it a go. Okay, from there, we have an app called Buzzkill, and I actually featured this on the channel at the start of 2021, and then I didn't use it for a long time following. However, I started using it again about a year ago, and now I seriously can't not use it. The app basically allows you to customize how your phone handles notifications, and honestly, there are almost countless ways that you could make use of it. But for me, right now, I use it on any phone that I'm actively using to dial back the amount of notifications that the Ultra Human app sends me, which is connected to this smart ring that I wear. So now I only get training and battery related notifications rather than the reminders about what time I should be going to sleep or when I should and shouldn't be drinking coffee. I don't need that in my life right now. And then another app that I'm not actively opening every single day, but that I have installed on every phone I use, and that as far as I'm concerned is one of the out and out unsung heroes of the Android world, is Shizuku. If you haven't heard of it, Shizuku basically acts as a middleman for any app that requires ADB permissions to be granted for some or all of its functionality, in that you essentially grant Shizuku ADB permissions first, and then from that point onwards, any supported apps that you use in the future that also require ADB permissions, you can grant them right from your phone using Shizuku instead. I featured it back on the channel halfway through 2021 when only a handful of apps supported it, but now nearly 4 years on, and there are way more apps that support it, and there's even a curated list of some of the best ones, which I'll link down in the description below. Then we've got another all-timer in my opinion, Notesnook, and as the name indicates, this is a note-taking application. And for me, it's the combo of its clean design, its incredibly deep feature set, and the fact that it has cross-device syncing support with a great web interface and support for iOS too. That's why I love using it. Oh, and it's also open source as well. And you could argue that Notesnook would be the perfect place for storing lists of things. However, ever since I featured it in March of 2022, I've actually preferred to use a separate app for this purpose called Listy. And for a while now, I basically just use this app to keep a track of the books that I'm reading each year. And the reason that I prefer using this app instead of Notesnook, for example, is that it automatically populates additional supporting information into your lists for you, like book covers or movie posters, and this just makes them look so much better. In theory, an app like Notesnook could add support for this if they wanted, and I kind of wish that they did so I didn't have to keep using 2 separate apps. But in the meantime, I'll probably keep using Listy even if they still persist with not adding support for cross-device syncing. Alright, from there, I'm going to ask you to bear with me whilst I self-indulge for a little bit here, because if you didn't already know, I've actually created and featured a number of my own apps on the channel over the years, and 4 of them are actually going to get a feature on the list today, which I know might seem like a lot, but just let me defend myself. You see, each of the apps that I've ever created over the years have been made purely out of the fact that I was looking for an app that either didn't exist at all, or if it did, it didn't have a design language that I enjoyed using, or there was a very specific feature that I was looking for that didn't exist. So for example, the next app on the list, Palette, not only was this my very first app that I ever made, so it holds a very special place in my heart, but at the time, I was looking for a way to build a community around custom home screen setups that I could then sift through to find setups to showcase on my channel. Then, when people would watch those videos, rather than having to upload all the files to Google Drive and then linking to those files in the descriptions of each of the videos and so forth, which by the way, I had been doing prior to Palette, and it was becoming a real big mess. Instead of that, viewers could just open the setups within Palette directly, and all the assets would be there, ready to go, easy as you like. And whilst there were a couple of other apps that showcased home screen setups at the time, none of them had strict rules around attaching backup files to setups, and none of them were obviously connected to my channel. And to this day, Palette is by far our most successful app that we've ever launched, with over 750,000 unique installs over its lifetime and over 60,000 active users right now. And as far as I'm concerned, those numbers are pretty mind-boggling. Then we have a very old app called SMS Backup and Restore, which I didn't actually feature on the channel until late 2022, but that I was using long before I did. Essentially, as someone who often transfers back and forth between several devices throughout the year, and given that Google is still yet to support their own backup and restore feature within the Google Messages app, I rely on this app to make sure that my SMS chat history gets maintained across each phone that I use. And even though I don't listen to as many podcasts these days as I'd like to, when I do get around to it, I use an app called Snipped. And trust me, I've tried finding a podcast app with a better design, but there are none that even come close, and that's to go along with all of its amazing features too. Now, I will say the app isn't quite as bug-free as other apps I've used in the past, in that whilst it does support cross-device syncing and it supports both iOS and Android, it also hardly ever seems to remember where I'm up to in specific episodes whenever I switch between devices, and this is pretty annoying. But despite that, unless another more reliable podcast app comes along with a design that's just as good or better, then Snipped will probably continue to be my go-to choice. And then the second of my own apps getting a feature in this video is Shelf. And where Palette is an app for discovering home screen setups, Shelf is an app for discovering app recommendations themselves. And not only do I use this app all the time myself for finding and discovering new apps that other users have added, but we're also now adding new app recommendations daily. And so I thought it was particularly relevant to mention it in this video, because if you're sad that this top Android app series is ending, but you still want a way to discover new apps, well, Shelf might just be the next best option. And then another app that I've dabbled in many times over the years, but that I never really featured on the channel until this 10 Reasons to Root Your Phone in 2023 video, is the king of all automation apps, Tasker. And even then, I didn't start properly using it until late last year. And for those interested, I actively use 3 automations right now. This one here that shows an intensity slider whenever I turn on my phone's torch, which is just so convenient. There's also this one that organizes my downloads folder automatically. And then this one that, after a bit of a setup process, enables A2B Wi-Fi and Shizuku automatically anytime that I reboot my phone without needing access to a computer. And if you want to see how to set these up yourself, then I made an entire video showcasing not just those 3, but 10 amazing Tasker automations in total, which I'll link up in the cards. Then, if you're like me and you're a fan of using lovely, vibrant wallpapers, but you wish that you could stop them from blinding you at night, well then Dual Wallpaper is the app for you. It essentially lets you set up 2 different wallpapers that will switch automatically whenever your system theme changes. So right now, I've got this amazing, vibrant, paper-style landscape wallpaper that I use in the day, but when my dark theme automatically activates at night, or if I manually switch it over myself, it then changes to this much darker, low-light friendly wallpaper instead. And by the way, if you're looking at my home screen here wondering where these cute little app icons are from, well, they're from an icon pack that I made called Drops. And if you've been around for a while, then that name might sound familiar to you. And that's because there was another icon pack of the same name that I used to use all the time, but it stopped getting updated in 2017 with only around 400 icons supported. It also wasn't available on the Play Store anymore, and so I worked alongside my team to essentially reboot the pack whilst also making sure that it stays actively updated. And yeah, this icon layout with this icon pack, I use this on every single phone that I use. And as for the wallpapers themselves, well, if you've been following me over the past year, then I'm sure it'll come as no surprise that they're also from an app that I've made called Lumina Walls. And by the way, the 2 wallpapers that you've just seen, they're from this Paper Wonderland collection, which I'm seriously in love with. But as someone who reviews a lot of phones and who's super into customization, I'd been for a very long time looking for a one-stop app filled to the brim with wallpapers in the styles and color palettes that I like. So that if I ever need, a red wallpaper to match the top-down setup that I'm filming in, then I've got one. Or if I need a blue one to match a blue backdrop, there we go. And so that's where Lumina Walls comes in. Literally every single wallpaper that gets added has been vetted by me, which means I like them all. There's also at least 2 or 3 new free wallpapers added every single day, and we're actually up to over 850 free wallpapers at the time of making this video, not to mention all of these incredible premium collections too, which by the way, I've literally asked my design team to create because that's what I was into that month and I wanted wallpapers in that style. But then on top of all of that, 90% of the wallpaper apps that I come across, they have fairly plain designs and the animations are borderline non-existent. So I wanted to create something that was not only visually pleasing to look at, but one that was also incredibly fluid to use. And I think with Lumina Walls, we've achieved exactly that. And I've got to say, I think out of every single app that I've made, this is the one that I actively open and use the most. And last but certainly not least, we have an app that I use every week, potentially every day even, called LocalSend, which is like a universal, all platforms accepting version of QuickShare and AirDrop. And look, QuickShare has come a long way over the years, but it still doesn't have an iOS version or a first-party macOS version. And to be honest, it's actually way slower in my experience compared to LocalSend. The only downside to using LocalSend is that because it is a native, you can't just leave it running in the background. You always have to open the app for it to work, at least on the phones. But aside from that, once the app is open, it works pretty much flawlessly. And so unless Google and Samsung can somehow get their acts together and get a version of QuickShare onto iOS and macOS, then I'll probably be using LocalSend for a long, long time going forward. But that's it. Those are my 20 favorite apps of all time, and I'm interested to hear whether any of these apps are also your favorites, and if not, let me know what apps are in your top 20 down in the comments below. Don't forget to check out the amazing deal CyberGhost VPN is offering at the moment by clicking that special link down in the description. 84% off plus 4 extra months free with a 45-day money-back guarantee, making it a risk-free way to keep your data safe while you browse, plus unlock blocked content from any site. Aside from that, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.